It was a quiet evening, much like any other. I just finished preparing dinner and set the table, feeling a sense of routine comfort. My husband, Tom, was sitting in his usual spot on the couch, scrolling through his phone. The kids were in their rooms, and for the first time that week, everything felt peaceful. But peace often hides the chaos beneath. Little did I know, my world was about to be shattered. It started with small things. He'd come home late from work, saying he'd been busy with overtime, and I'd nod, accepting his words because I trusted him. We had been married for 12 years after all. I knew how demanding his job was, but deep down, something in me began to feel off. There were moments when I'd catch him looking at his phone a bit too long, deleting texts before I could even glance at them. At first, I thought I was just being paranoid. Maybe I was overthinking things, but then there were the whispers. At first, I thought it was just my imagination, but my friends started to mention strange things. Have you noticed how often your neighbor, Lisa, seems to be hanging around? They'd say, "Oh, or I saw Tom walking into Lisa's house one evening, and it didn't look like Lisa, our neighbor. She was always friendly, too friendly at times. But I never imagined, no, I never wanted to imagine, that something like that could happen." Lisa was a few years younger than me, attractive, with a magnetic personality that seemed to draw people in. I knew Tom enjoyed talking to her. She often had gatherings and invited us over, though I preferred staying home with the kids. But now I started wondering if there had been something more going on between them. My suspicions only grew after I noticed how Tom started to act differently. He was distant, distracted. He stopped talking about his day, stopped asking about mine. When I would try to hold his hand or kiss him, it felt like he was pulling away. One afternoon, I was at the store when I ran into Lisa. She seemed overly cheerful, almost too eager to chat. "How are you doing, Sarah?" "Tom's been working so hard lately," she said, with that smile of hers that always made me feel uncomfortable. I was about to reply when she added, "He's such a great guy, isn't he? I mean, I've always admired how dedicated he is to you and your family." The words hit me like a ton of bricks. There was something in her tone that I couldn't place, and I suddenly realized that I had never felt a genuine connection with her. Not really. She was always just too perfect, always just too interested in everything I had, too interested in him. When I got home, the air felt thick, suffocating. I found Tom in the kitchen, looking at the clock as if he was waiting for something or someone. When he saw me, he smiled, but it wasn't the smile I had known for all these years. It was strained, forced. My heart raced, and I just knew. The moment he turned his back to grab a glass of water, I checked his phone. His password was the same as it had always been, so I unlocked it without hesitation. I scanned his messages, feeling sick to my stomach as I saw the text between him and Lisa. Sweet nothings, flirting, and plans to meet when I wasn't around. It was all right there in front of me. They were having an affair. I could feel the floor crumble beneath me. I wanted to scream, to confront him right then and there, but instead, I just stood frozen, reading the messages as my world fell apart. Finally, when I couldn't take it anymore, I approached him. I had to say something. "Tom," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "what's going on between you and Lisa?" His face went pale. For a moment, I thought he might lie, but instead he just stared at me, guilt written all over his face. "Sarah, I'm so sorry," he started, his voice shaking. "It was a mistake. I never meant for it to happen, but I love her, Sarah." The words stung, sharp and cutting. He loved her. He loved her. And I stood there feeling like I was dying inside. Every word, every confession felt like a knife twisting deeper. "You love her?" I asked, my voice trembling with anger and disbelief. "How long, Tom? How long has this been going on?" He lowered his head. "A few months. It was just supposed to be casual at first, but I got caught up in it." A few months. That's how long he had been lying to me. I felt a numbness wash over me, and in that moment, I couldn't even cry. I just stood there, paralyzed by the betrayal. "I never wanted to hurt you, Sarah. You've been the best wife I could have asked for," he said, his voice pleading. I don't want to lose you. But it was too late. The damage was done. The man I had loved for over a decade, the father of my children, had betrayed me in the worst way possible. And the woman who had pretended to be my friend, who had walked into my home, smiled at my children, had been the one to steal him away. I couldn't even look at him anymore. I didn't know what to do or where to go from here. The trust had been shattered, and it wasn't something that could just be fixed with apologies. I had to figure out who I was now, outside of being Tom's wife. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying everything in my mind, the moments when I should have seen the signs, the lies I'd overlooked, the things I had chosen to ignore. I thought about how different life would be from now on. How much would I change? Would I ever trust again? And what about the kids? What would this mean for them? In the end, I realized that I had to let go. Not for him, not for her, but for me. Because if I stayed, I would just be clinging to a life that no longer existed. I told Tom the next day that we were done, that he had made his choice, and I couldn't live with the betrayal. It was the hardest thing I had ever done. And so, the journey began. It wasn't easy. It still isn't. But I know one thing for sure. I'll never let anyone, man or woman, make me feel small again. I deserve better.